Neil was a visionary.
He was respectful.
And a leader, and a very patient person.
Neil Kocurek, for me, is a role model.
It was very effective. He was very inclusive.
He will always be that image that will cause me to benchmark, am I doing the right thing?
He is probably one of the wisest guys that I've ever met.
Neil had the ability to bring people together.
A consensus builder.
He's a man of integrity.
Inclusive.
One of the most competent yet humble men I've ever been around.
He was a great listener.
Open-minded.
He was very, very intelligent.
So you get this very warm person and this very tenacious person, and you bring them together and you get a Neil Kocurek.
Dad was big on responsibility. He was big on pushing yourself to do your best. He was big on working hard. Still, I find myself striving to make him proud of me, even though he's not here.
A day in the life of Neil Kocurek began around 4 o'clock. He usually slept between 4 and 5 hours every night. He would get up at 4:30 or 5 and plan his day and leave the house around 6. And he usually had 3 or 4 breakfast conferences before he ever got to work.
It really didn't sink in until after Neil's death just how much Neil was doing, not only for our foundation, but for other organizations he was involved with in this community. We couldn't figure out how we could replace what Neil had been doing with a half a dozen or a dozen people.
He did the same thing in the evening. He would leave work and go to dinner or to a speaker. Neil spent many, many hours at the city council meetings, and I used to watch him at night when he was at the city council.
Neil just had this uncanny ability to get people to do things. He would get people interested and willing to build new schools, to get behind bond packages, to build transportation systems. I mean, the list just goes on and on. He'd get people to come together. He did it with just sheer determination and the tenacity and persistence.
He wouldn't say anything in meetings. He would guide meetings. He would get everyone else to make their points first. And then at the very end of the meeting, he would sort of summarize the points, include everybody, and bring it to, this is what I think we're saying we need to do.
My father was the same at work as he was at home. He was always a diplomatic person and open-minded and willing to listen to everyone. So I don't think there was much separation between work and home.
Neil was a mentor to me. He truly believed in public education. He was a man of vision. He was a forward thinker in all aspects.
You can look to the Neil Kocurek Health Institute at Lanier High School. Neil was the person, he was the mind behind driving the need for a school like that within AISD.
And he was able to generate some resources to get donation so we could get that, machine to take your blood pressure, and keep it updated, because technology in the medical field, changes almost annually. You just have to look at Austin and see what Neil did with the healthcare district and Envision Central Texas, the Civic Center. I mean, his legacy is all over this community. He was a brilliant, creative, but humble man.
Neil was very passionate about education. I mean, look, you've got a guy who finished the salutatorium of his high school. He got a bachelor's degree, master's degree, a PhD degree in electrical engineering. He saw education as a way of moving away from your circumstances so that your circumstances never have a chance to define who you are. So it stands to reason to me that he would indeed, part of his legacy would be a scholarship.
When he got his PhD, he said, now I know how little I know. It's so vast, But all 3 of his children got graduate degrees. 2 of them are lawyers and one's a doctor.
But he also wanted his children to be well-rounded.
My dad coached football in the fall, basketball in the winter, and baseball in the spring, and we just rotated those sports each year.
I went to him and asked him if he would do something with me, hoping we'd go to the movie or the mall or something like that. And he said he'd think about it, and that was my father. He always had to think about what would come next. And later on he came up to me and said, we can do one of two things. We can do a flag football league or a softball, girls softball league. And he formed the league for my friends and myself to play girls softball. My dad coached all the years that I played softball, and he would draft a different team every year. And he would swing by the house and pick me up on the way home from the office, and we'd go straight to the softball fields, and he would sometimes take off his tie, sometimes he would coach the whole game in his tie, but he made it a point to be there. He had said he would do that, and he did.
Neil wrote this letter to us on March 21st of 1972.
Dear Mom and Dad, I've started this letter several times, but I always seem to land somewhere before I finish
The
it.
fact that I love life is important to me. I like sand and weeds and spiders. I like 18-hour work days. I like art and football games with the kids. I like good moods and bad moods, the ups and downs. I love living. The fact that I like myself with my faults is important to me. I like being. I don't want to be anyone else. I don't wish to trade places with anyone else. Therefore, I am happy.
He really loved Austin, and he wanted to make it a better place to live. But one of his most proudest moments was when the convention center was built.
The Neil Kocurek Austin Convention Center would not exist were it not for Neil.
That took about 6 or 7 years of small meetings. Many, many days and nights he would go and meet with small neighborhood groups to try and get people to want the convention center.
He was a quiet giant, and Neil died at 67 years old. I mean, come on, 67. That's young today. So that means that he accomplished these things in the time frame that many people just coming up to speed.
What Neil did, he didn't do for himself. He did this because he wanted to make a difference. And so these scholarships are not scholarships necessarily to recognize him. I think he would want the recipients of the scholarships to know that they were carrying on his vision, that they would continue that process and be inspired to make a difference themselves.